This is a video response to my dear friend Jacqueline Glenn here on YouTube. Yesterday she made a video titled Elliot Rodger, Madman versus Misogynist, hashtag yes for all women. And I wanted to make this response to Jacqueline because I felt as if she left some things out which needed to be talked about and mentioned in my video, so this is a video response to her. In no way do I mean any disrespect or anything, but there are some things that I kind of disagreed with that I think should have been mentioned in her video that could have been better worded / thought out, and this is my video response to her. But before we begin, Audible.com is a company hosted by Amazon that hosts thousands upon thousands of audiobooks for your listening entertainment and enjoyment. Recently, I have been listening to William Shakespeare's The Empire Striketh Back. Yes, I said that. For those of you who don't know already, I'm leaving for Japan next week, and I'm going to be using Audible.com listening to all of my Star Wars novels for the whole 13-hour flight that I fly to Japan. However, if you're interested in signing up for Audible.com, if you use my vanity URL linked down below, audible.com/MrRepzion, you will in fact get a free 1-month free trial for Audible.com, along with a free audiobook for absolutely free. Check it out.
Hey guys, so I want to talk a little bit about Elliot Rodger. Now, I know that there have been videos made about him before, and I don't want to repeat anything that's already been said. I'm sure you've seen the video that he made several times, so I'm not going to sit here and show clips of that. But what I do want to say is that whenever a tragedy happens, and this is something that happens every single time, and it annoys the shit out of me every single time, people like to hop onto these types of issues like vultures. They see something and they think it's going to help them with their movement or their political agenda, and they use it to their advantage, which is just disgusting. And they like to downplay, in this case, mental illness. This guy was clearly mentally insane. Now, I'm looking at the video that he made and other things that he said. It's clear that he is not mentally stable. I am not part of the human race. Humanity has rejected me. The females of the human species have never wanted to mate with me, so how could I possibly consider myself part of humanity? Humanity has never accepted me among them, and now I know why. I am more than human. I am superior to them all. I am Elliot Rodger, magnificent, glorious, supreme, eminent, divine. I am the closest thing there is to a living God. Humanity is disgusting, depraved, and evil species. It is my purpose to punish them all. I will purify the world of everything that is wrong with it. On the day of retribution, I will truly be a powerful God, punishing everyone I deem to be impure and depraved. How can anybody look at something like this and say, I think it's because he was misogynistic, or I think it was because of something else. I don't think it was so much of a mental illness. Now, there are other things that come into play, but he was mentally ill. I think that paragraph that I just read kind of proves it.
Here's the thing about this, Jacqueline. I believe it's wrong for you, or anyone for that matter, to pinpoint his intentions, his killings, his rampage on one specific thing. You know, the women going around saying he did this specifically because of misogyny. That's stupid, it's wrong, it's naive, it's ignorant. For you or anyone else to simply say he did this purely because he was mentally ill is wrong, naive, and ignorant. Now, I'm not denying that he didn't have a mental illness. Rather, I'm simply making the case that you can't blame that specific factor on why he did it. This guy had issues. Yes, he had a mental illness, but I have a mental illness too, Jacqueline. And I'm not making threats, and I'm not going out and running people over, stabbing or killing people. I have mental illnesses, and when dealing with mental illnesses, when talking about this in videos to thousands of people, it's really important that you don't generalize or stereotype mental illnesses, because mental illness is a deeply misunderstood area. There is different levels of mental illnesses. You know, I'm all the way at the bottom of mental illnesses, but I do have a mental illness. And then there's all the way to the top of mental illnesses, which when you're at the top is really, really dangerous. The manifesto that you showed here, I see someone who is mentally ill, yes, but I also see that mental illness that you talk about in this brief part of your the manifesto that you show here as someone who has narcissistic personality disorder. And combined with, when you have narcissistic personality disorder combined with your upbringing and the environment that you had growing up as a child, that is almost a guaranteed disaster. Narcissistic personality disorder is a very dangerous mental condition. People who have narcissistic personality disorder, not all of those people are like Elliot Rodger, who want to go out and kill people because they don't get what they want. It's very clear through reading that this guy was narcissistic. You can tell by the way he writes about himself, the way he props himself up to be some sort of god. Here is my medical sheet. This shows that I have depression, and in fact I have chronic depression, which is really, well, I had chronic depression. I still have it. I don't take medication for it anymore because I kind of got off of the medication and I'm doing great by myself. Since this story has happened, I keep seeing people say, like in your video, that the cause was mental illness and that I'm getting labeled and generalized and stereotyped into this group of people that because I have a mental illness of chronic depression, I therefore am dangerous when I'm obviously not. Understanding pathology and mental illnesses and disorders is a very complex issue that when you talk about it in future videos, I hope you don't make the same generalization of mental illnesses like you've done in this video. Again, no hard feelings, but I just felt that it was really important to mention that because a lot of people I could tell from watching your video and reading comments felt as if you were actually stigmatizing mental illnesses, which is something that people who have mental illnesses like myself are always trying to combat against, that not all people with mental illnesses are crazy or want to go on a rampage and murder people.
But there are people who like to hop on the bandwagon and say that it's different things. I don't think I've heard this yet, but a lot of times when these things happen, people say, oh, it's because of a violent video game that they played, or it's because of a violent movie that they watched. They never want to blame the actual problem. Now in this case, the most ridiculous thing I saw was blaming the killings on a homosexual impulse. Leave it to Fox News to say that he was simply angry at women for taking men away from him. And of course you can't have any kind of shooting without everybody coming out and talking about gun control. Even though he stabbed people to death, he killed more people using other things. He ran people over with his car. I mean, he didn't only kill people with a gun. Now, I understand that he had a gun, and that helped him be more violent, but
gun control, Jacqueline, needs to be discussed. Now, I don't have any alternative as to what we should do regarding, I don't think making stricter gun control is really going to stop a lot of different things, but I want to say this. I own my own weapon. This is my Glock. I love this pistol. It's a 40 caliber Glock. It's the smallest Glock you can get. I love this pistol. But the reason I'm showing you that is because I acquired it legally. I went through the paperwork, went through all the background checks, everything. Elliot Rodger required the numerous guns that he had, all legally in his name. That's a problem. Very big problem. And what's more disturbing about this issue of gun control is the fact that his parents reported him to the police, we already know this, about his statements wanting to kill people. The police visited him, they interviewed him, talked to him, and they said he was a polite young gentleman. Yet he made statements saying that he wanted to kill people. And yet, law enforcement did nothing. They didn't say, hey, this guy has his own weapons. He made these sorts of statements. We should confiscate his guns and weapons. Because let me tell you something. What needs to happen, if I made a YouTube video, like I'm making right now, with my gun, holding it up in the air like this, saying that I'm going to go on a rampage and kill everybody who rejected me, I would hope that the police would be at my door and that they would take away my weapons. They would take it away. Another issue that I have with gun control that needs to be discussed, which you dismiss here, is the mental health conditions of people who can legally obtain weapons. I have a mental illness, and I have a weapon. I have chronic depression, and I have a weapon. Now, the reason I'm mentioning that is because when I did my registration for my weapon, there was nothing about, there was no tests or anything to determine my mental state of health, where people you need to go see, a psychologist to determine whether you're in the mental state to even carry a gun, even to have a license to have your own weapon. There was none of that. I got a paper form, filled out some stuff, gave my address, my places that I did I have any criminal record or anything like that, filled it all out, gave it to the guy sent it to the police department, the police department sent it to the King County place, it was sent back to me, they approved it, voila, I walked in and got a gun. It was that simple. Getting a weapon is really easy. It took about 3 weeks, they did a background check, but the fact of the matter is, I have a mental illness. Now, I'm not saying that because somebody has a mental illness, they should be disqualified from owning a firearm, but depending on the severity of that mental illness, they need to be disqualified from having a firearm. Because this guy, as we've already established, he had a mental illness. That wasn't the sole cause of this. Numerous different factors were. But Elliot Rodger's weapons were not taken away from him, despite him being reported to the police about him wanting to kill people. And that just shocks me. That shows to me that there is something ultimately, fundamentally fucked up and wrong with the whole situation regarding gun control, because his guns should have been taken away from him whether he was joking or not, and obviously he wasn't joking, but he made threats to people wanting to kill people, and yet they dismissed him. It's ridiculous. So gun control does need to be discussed here. Do I have an alternative on what we should do? No, but my only thing that I want to mention about gun control is that if someone makes a threat wanting to kill people and they own legal firearms, they need to have those firearms taken away from them. That is what I believe.
But let's look at the problem for what it is. We have a kid who is out to kill by any means necessary. Guns are not the problem. This kid's mental instability is the problem. But nobody really cares about those facts because he's still going to be the poster child for gun control. The trolls are unbelievable.
I really wouldn't classify these people talking about gun control as trolls, because there's a lot of genuine concern right here that, as I just mentioned, he had all legal firearms. He was reported to the police, and they did nothing to confiscate those weapons. That shows that there's an issue here.
Every time someone goes on a killing rampage, the gun nuts come flying out of the woodwork to blame Obama, the liberals, the Democrats, the ACLU, and the apparent lack of good men with guns. Thanks, Obama. And last but not least, we have all the feminists. Now, don't get me wrong, it was a man, he was violent, and a lot of times there are some men out there who do get violent whenever they don't get what they want, when they don't get the girl that they want, when they get rejected, when they don't get sex. I understand. But this kid is not a good example of that because he was mentally insane. Not to mention he killed more men than women. Gender equality is important, and when there's an issue that needs to be fought, stand up and fight it. That's fine, I have no problem with that. But don't take an issue like this and try to twist it around and downplay his mental instability to give more credit to misogyny. That's not okay to do.
I completely and utterly agree with you at this point, but I want to mention something that I think I really haven't seen anybody mention regarding this story of Elliot Rodger, is the fact that culture and society is fucked up in terms of what we put on the shoulders of men. And what I mean by this is virginity, sex. In our culture, we describe men as a lesser man because he didn't have sex by age 18, because he didn't bang that pussy. I'm serious. This is, even in my religious church, this was something that I dealt with regarding me. I've lost my virginity at age 22, right? Before that time, before like 18, 19, 20, I had people constantly criticizing me that would mock me, who would put me down for me not getting laid because of my age. You're how old and you still haven't had sex? Now, I'm not excusing Elliot Rodger's behavior because of this, but it's important that we acknowledge the fact that men are put down, diminished, told that they're not a real man because they're not having sex and banging those fine-ass bitches every single year or every single month or every single week at their college dorms. It's disgusting that we live in a culture like that where we tell men that they need to be a man by banging people, by having sex. So therefore, these expectations are put in the minds of men that they need to do this by this certain time, that if they don't have sex by this certain age, that they're failure, that they're not a real man, that their masculinity is somehow diminished because they didn't have sex at age 18. It's important that people acknowledge this and see that it's an issue in our society and culture.
Now, on the other hand, I'm not going to sit here and lie and say that misogyny had nothing to do with it, because this kid was clearly very misogynistic, and that's not okay. And it reminds me kind of people who are very, very liberal, very, very far left, and whenever an act of terrorism happens, they like to say it had nothing to do with the religion. The religion's totally peaceful and A-okay. But it has everything to do with the mental state of the terrorist. That's a bunch of bullshit, because yeah, the terrorist might be mentally unstable, but the religion is something that had a large influence on what happened, and it's normal to fear that religion as a result. But the difference is that men are not subscribed to a particular religion that endorses that kind of behavior. There's not like a rule code book for men that says that they're superior to women that they follow. It's not like that. This is the equivalent of taking anybody from the Middle East and saying that I'm going to be afraid of them because they're from the Middle East. Just because somebody has a penis does not give you reason to fear them. And I don't like this victimization that women like to take on so much. Like, I don't want to be labeled as a victim just because I have a vagina. That's why I hate the hashtag yes all women. Don't speak for me. I'm sorry, but I'm just not okay with raising a generation of women who are fearful of all men, who feel like they're always going to be a victim of things. And this is one thing I'll fault my mom for. Whenever I was little, we had bugs in our house. We had roaches. It was Florida. She was terrified of them. She would scream and run to get the bug spray, and it was this huge ordeal. So I was raised with that. And now I have this phobia of bugs. If I see one, if I even get too close to one, I might actually cry. That's how scared I am of bugs. And if I hadn't been raised like that, maybe I would just step on them with a shoe. Maybe I would just kick a bug out of the house, pick it up and throw it away. I don't know. I wouldn't freak out like I do now. And I feel like we're doing something kind of similar. We're raising young women to be afraid of all men, and that's not okay. It reminds me a lot of all the anti-bullying campaigns that go on, and that's great because bullying is a problem just like misogyny is a problem. But the problem that people have with this is they try to fix the bullies. And as much as you try, it's not ever going to work completely. What you have to do is you have to target the kids who are being bullied and teach them to stand up for themselves.
Just stand up for yourself. Grow some balls. And he still gets punched in the nose. He goes to the doctor and finds out, hey, the bully punched me, now I have a broken nose. No, that mentality, Jacqueline, is not a solution. Telling someone just to stand up for yourself for being bullied is not a solution to the issue of bullying. The issue is tackling the people who are committing the actions against those people who are innocent. Because I've seen people stand up for themselves and still get punched in the face because a bully is a bully. And for the most part, whether you're cowered in fear from that bully or you stand up for yourself and say, stop it, if they want to hurt you, they're going to hurt you. It's that simple. Telling someone to grow some balls is not really going to solve anything. Rather, we need to be reprimanding the people who are actually committing the injustice actions about bullying, such as calling someone a faggot constantly all the time, or telling or mocking someone because they came out as gay. That type of behavior is unacceptable. It should not be tolerated. It needs to be addressed by the school district. Sadly, a lot of schools don't know how to address the issue at hand. They don't know how to properly punish a bully, but rather just continue to let that bully reign in his power at school and do nothing while he hurts and, even to a possibility, takes innocent lives through his bullying of other people. And you know, if a bully takes the life of somebody else by pushing them to that point of putting a gun to their head or hanging themselves because they feel so ashamed for being gay, I believe that bully should be held accountable legally for pushing that person over the edge. Believe me, being told growing up in the church to just grow some balls to stand up for yourself, I stood up for myself, and it didn't do anything for me. In fact, it made matters worse because they didn't respect me enough to just back off. So I don't really see the point of telling someone to grow balls, stand up for yourself, how that's a solution to the issue of bullying at all. But I'm getting way off topic. I would like to summarize this video, kind of rehash a few points that I've made. So mental illness. I'm not denying that he didn't have a mental illness. Elliot Rodger, he obviously did. But, you know, as Jacqueline, it was kind of odd that the video started off with saying, don't, you know, pinpoint it strictly to he did this because of misogyny, when Jacqueline then continues on to say that it's strictly because he was mentally ill for the reasons he did this. It's a lot of different factors. You know, I mentioned earlier in the video about the virginity issue, the pressure we put on men that they have to be this certain masculine man by age 18 or something, and they have to have sex with people because if they don't, they're not a real man, and that creates... Our culture environment can really take somebody who has a mental illness and make them worse off by the conditioning that we put on those men at a young age. Understanding pathology and not stigmatizing / generalizing / stereotyping mental illnesses is really important because, again, I have a mental illness and I don't want to kill people for not having sex. And obviously gun control does need to be discussed. Yes, he was going to kill people whether he had guns or not. Yes, as she mentioned, Jacqueline mentioned, it made it easier for him to kill. But the fact is those guns weren't taken away from him when he made those threats months prior, which says a lot about our law enforcement, which says a lot about the issues of addressing mental health. Because if someone wants to makes threats with a gun that he's going to go out and kill people, and he has his own weapons, those weapons should be taken away from him instantly. No hesitation. That didn't happen, so therefore it made it easier for him to kill. But yeah, I'll end the video with that. So her video that I responded to is linked down below. If you would like to watch it, I would recommend you watch it so you can see the discussion that we're having back and forth and my points and her points. And also, please don't forget, if you're interested in audible.com, you can check out my URL, audible.com/MrRepzion, to get a free month subscription for absolutely free, along with a free audiobook of your choosing. Thank you for watching. My name is Daniel Solzbach, also known as Mr. Repzion. I will see you tomorrow in my next Let's Play.